Speaking of being canceled, a congressman is locked out of Twitter. Yes. New York Post, Twitter suspends Representative Banks' account for misgendering the trans health official. So Representative Jim Banks, his official Twitter account was suspended after he referred to Assistant Health Secretary Rachel Levine, the first openly transgender 4-star officer in the U.S., 8 uniformed services, as a man. The Republican lawmaker from Indiana claimed he was posting a statement of fact when he tweeted about Levine the same day she was ceremonially sworn in as an admiral in the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps. Quote, "The title of the first female 4-star officer gets taken by a man," Banks tweeted Thursday. So that's what the congressman tweeted. Again, the congressman tweeted, "The title of the first female 4-star officer gets taken by a man," Banks tweeted. I think that's funny. Maybe this congressman should be, a comedian. Congressman Banks's account was immediately suspended Saturday for violating Twitter's hateful conduct policy, barring the promotion of violence against others on the basis of gender identity. The policy also bars, quote, targeted misgendering, end quote, of transgender people. I'm sorry, targeted misgendering. So, quote, calling someone that was born and lived as a man for 54 years the first female 4-star officer is an insult to every little girl who dreams of breaking glass ceilings one day. Congressman Banks said that in a follow-up tweet Tuesday. Again, quote, calling someone that was born and lived as a man for 54 years the first female 4-star officer is an insult to every little girl who dreams of breaking glass ceilings one day, Banks said in a follow-up tweet Tuesday. Very funny. On Saturday, he vowed not to back down to Twitter following the suspension. Pretty awesome stuff. Quote, Twitter has suspended my official account for posting a statement of fact, Banks tweeted on his personal account. I won't back down. I'll be posting on my personal account for the time being. Big tech must be held accountable. So as you can imagine, all the LGBTQ activists just went like crazy, and they went after this United States congressman because he dared say something that was not only true, but something that is funny. And it reminds me again of Dave Chappelle's Netflix special, The Closer. We talked about this a little bit last podcast, and we're going to talk a little bit about that because Bill Maher came out just recently to back Dave Chappelle. And this all is connected to what this congressman just did and this congressman just said. Congressman's being banned from Twitter until he voluntarily deletes his post. So Twitter is trying to control free speech. Just nuts. Just nuts. It's like, delete your post. We're offended. And then we'll let you back into our special club. So just to remind you, I should say, here is Dave Chappelle's comment on his Netflix special. First, you're going to hear this, then we're going to hear a Bill Maher. Here's the clip.
Every human being in this room, every human being on earth had to pass through the legs of a woman to be on earth. That is a fact.
So Dave Chappelle said that in his Netflix special, The Closer, and the progressive left went crazy. They want to cancel him. They want even of course, thousands of Netflix employees. Maybe it was hundreds. I'm not really sure. But they did a walkout, right? Even though they're working from home. We talked about that last podcast. Well, there was some momentum to try to cancel Dave Chappelle. And Bill Maher, obviously on the left, no doubt about it. Bill Maher, a classic liberal, though. A classic liberal because he's a critical thinker. Even though, let's face it, he's no friend of Republicans, but he is a critical thinker on issues, decides to back up Dave Chappelle. In other words, he has his back. And so Bill Maher talks about this very issue of Dave Chappelle's comments, which, by the way, are comedic comments, right? It's supposed to be funny. That's all it is. It's supposed to make you laugh. You're not allowed to do that. Remember, the congressman who was locked out of Twitter, he's not allowed to do it. Dave Chappelle can't do it. And Bill Maher talks about that. We have that clip, and here it is.
But this gets at it. Words have meaning, but not anymore. And when I hear transphobic, phobic has a meaning. fear. I'm not transphobic if I merely disagree with you. It's not hate. I mean, here's what one of the reactions from someone who worked at Netflix said: this is not an argument with two sides. Well, right away you lost me. It is an argument with trans people who want to be alive and people who don't want us to be. Well, that's just ridiculous. Dave Chappelle does not want you to not be alive.
Amen.
So, of course not. Of course not. And so Bill Maher, I like how he says, they're talking on the other side about how there is only one version of truth. You can't have any kind of discussion about this. It's settled science. And this is the problem that I have as a Republican with any kind of progressive views when they're like, it's settled science. You can't have any further discovery or conversation whatsoever. It's just the way it is. And we will cancel you because it's settled. And Bill Maher is like, well, you lost me just on that one alone, because a classic liberal would never say that. A classic liberal wouldn't say it's settled science. A classic liberal would always say, let's continue talking and learning and getting closer and closer to the truth through discussion, through debate, and through critical thinking skills. Pretty good stuff that Bill Maher gets up and thank God this is finally happening on the left. Finally on the left, you have comedians coming out and saying, enough already. This is stupid, right? Just like with Republican congressmen, they're finally coming out and just calling the stupidity out of Barack Obama, same thing. Barack Obama or Joe Biden, same person, because we know who's really in charge of the White House, appointing this individual who's the first trans female officer, and it's really a guy. And everybody knows it. So it's really an insult to women to do that. That's my personal opinion. And that is a traditional opinion. I acknowledge that. But at least I'm honest about it. I want to still have a conversation about it. But by having that conversation in any capacity, anywhere, you're canceled. And so just to remind you again about how awful Dave Chappelle is, but the fact that he finally has some other comedians coming out and supporting him, we're going to play one more clip from his Netflix special, The Closer, just to remind you. And it's funny. And here's that clip.
I agree, man. Gender is a fact. You have to look at it from a woman's perspective. Look at it like this. Caitlyn Jenner, whom I've met, wonderful person. Caitlyn Jenner was voted Woman of the Year. Her first year as a woman. Ain't that something? Beat every in Detroit. She's better than all of them.
And that caused the left to go crazy. It caused them to go crazy. And yet any reasonable person would laugh at that and say, yeah, you know what? That actually really is funny. Because how can a dude be Woman of the Year just after being a woman for 1 year when in fact he's still really a dude? And I know this upsets people when conservatives speak this way, because to us, we're certainly willing to continue to have this conversation, but we're not afraid to have the conversation, and we're not afraid to force you to try to defend what I believe to be indefensible positions without question.